Good morning and welcome to this week's Jump discussion on the recruitment market and how things have changed. And this week we're talking about recruitment leaders, the industry shifts that divide most recruitment leaders. I think this is the last of the series of leadership, and we've been running that concurrently with our podcast, Recruitment Leaders Unlocked, where we've interviewed 4 different recruitment leaders of different sizes of business. We've asked the same set of questions to get different answers, and it sees how different leaders have developed their businesses and made them more profitable and made them stay relevant. And considering the number of recruitment agencies that are struggling at the moment or going under, and there are still quite a lot of recruitment agencies that are growing, I think leadership is critical. So today our aim is to help demystify some of the strategies behind adapting to changing markets. Should you stick? Should you twist? And how long does it take if you do those things? So today I'm joined by Paul. Paul's not feeling very well, so he's going to join in and out from there, but he's fresh from his cruise. And Dave, who's fresh from the tube, and he's looking very good, who's fresh from the tube in London. So let's kick off. Paul commented that these were possibly some of the hardest questions he's seen for an awful long time in recruitment. I'm not sure what he meant by that, but there you go. So let's kick off. Anyway, there's something happening in the recruitment that everyone's experiencing, but no one's publicly admitting. So the question is, what's the conversations that we are hearing or what you're having behind closed doors with other leaders that's not being sort of pushed into the public forum?
It seems, look, I'll kick this off. We are as an industry going through an incredibly challenging period. I think it's worth saying that, of course, we are servants to industry as an industry, if that makes sense. If industry is doing well, we do well, and of course, no one wants to say that the recruitment industry is sort of a victim. We are in a position where our customers are having a tough time out there. Most businesses are cutting back, looking at costs, not employing people to the degree they were before. It's tough out there, and what I'm saying here is not particularly cheerful, but of course everyone listening knows this to be the case. Although I have to say, in the last few weeks, I've been hearing much more positive things from my clients, talking about more jobs coming in, more activity, which has been really encouraging. And I had another meeting this morning at 9 around that very subject, where a client was telling me in the legal profession things have got quite busy, which is good to hear. But it's tough out there, and it's going to take a while before the clouds clear. I think what people are talking about here is, how do we change? Do we carry on doing what we've always done, and hope eventually that the clouds clear? But that run a risk with that. If you wait too long, you run out of money. Or do we shift? Do we change? And I think those are the conversations that people are having, and many agencies are beginning or have already started to look at new markets.
Did Paul just freeze?
No, I think he's actually stopped talking.
I have stopped talking.
Dave, do you want? It's a shock, I know, Dave. It must be the code.
It's interesting. I did an exercise with an excellent team of leaders that I'm involved with, talking about the uncertainty, the challenges, all the things that you've alluded to, Paul. So we did this exercise and wrote down all the things that we were certain about. In a time of uncertainty, what are we certain about? Are we certain about our people? Are we certain about the market we're in? And actually, we ended up with a really, really long list. And it was a really good reminder that although it is challenging, there are some good things happening out there. And the list kind of got longer the more we devoted a bit more time to it. And it made us all feel a little bit more comfortable. Not that everybody's out of the woods and different sectors are in different places, but it's a little bit like the weather here in London today. It's slightly cloudy, but there's lots of sun coming through. And like you, Paul, I've heard that actually people are thinking, actually, maybe we have reached the bottom. All the political uncertainty and the economic uncertainty, all that bigger stuff out there, that's going to happen whether we trade well or not. So what can we focus on that we're doing well? And we as leaders have got to have that direction and that leadership and say, come on, this is what's happening, but these are the things we can control. These are the things we're good at, and they will always be the things that will get us through. So I know there's a lot more to come in some of the other questions, but I don't think it is as bleak as some people might lead you to believe. I think there's opportunity out there. I think the market will reward well-run, well-managed businesses with good people.
And I think that's the same every time we come to a recession. And I think this recession, whether people are still claiming it's a recession or not, I think it's been a very hard market. I think it's been the hardest market since 2008. And I think a lot of agencies are struggling. Lots of agencies, as I can talk about later on, are growing. And I think they're all looking for that silver bullet. I mean, I've had 3 sessions this week with all new clients where they've taken up the free 60-minute mentoring offer that we do. And they've all sort of sat there and said, we're now having to smell the coffee very quickly because they are running out of their cash reserve. And they need to do something now. As recruiters, it's sort of almost drilled into us that we don't talk about failure. We only talk about our success. We don't talk to our competitors. But those conversations are actually going on behind closed doors. And I think the 2 topics that I'm coming across is how do we address the slide and how do we take market share? Because I've got clients who are absolutely killing this year. I've just come off a call with a client now, and she's already beaten her 2024 performance. Her team has already beaten that performance, and they're growing. And in the main, many of my new clients are having the issues because they haven't addressed things early enough. The recruitment, I think, is maturing. And as we know, 79% of the market has less than 10 heads. The vast majority of leaders may have never seen this really hard market, and they're a little bit lost. And dare I say, they're probably a little bit embarrassed that they haven't been doing the things that they should be doing, such as constant business development. And that fact has now taken to the point where they've recognized that they need to change now. And the market is now changing at such a fast speed. And if they don't adapt, they might not actually make it through. And I think they're the conversations that I'm seeing people having, and I'm seeing it from both sides, from those that are struggling, looking for the silver bullet, those that are absolutely having a whale of a time, and they are, they've implemented their silver bullet and it seems to be working. So let's move this into a bit more of a different sort of vibe then. Okay, when the market shifts dramatically, we see 2 types of leaders: those who adapt their entire strategy and those who just tweak around the edges, if they tweak at all. So can you talk us through any specific examples where you've seen leaders completely pivot their approach and what happened to those that didn't?
Look, I think the first thing to say here is that if you're going to strike off in a different direction, then do your homework. It isn't. I sometimes hear people talking about they've heard that a particular market is worth going after. Often the conversations are around maybe entering the American market, for example, or a European market. And when you ask questions, they haven't, in the nicest way, I'm saying this, without wishing to be too critical, but they haven't done their homework. They've heard stories, heard information, they've read stuff, but they haven't done their homework. And I think that before you push off in a different direction, it's very important that you do proper research, that you work very hard at developing a business plan. It's not just a question of reading a few articles or hearing somebody in the pub that you used to work with tell you that a market's great. Do your research, because, and I think you'll come to this, Howard, later, once you enter a market and you're paying an individual or several individuals a sum of money to start exploring that market, you're investing long-term, medium to long-term in going in that direction. And if you've not done your homework, you can be wasting even more money. So it's very important. I do think, and you made a point here, Howard, is that businesses always need to evolve. And I think what I want to say, and I think it's an important point here, is it shouldn't be a case that something jolts you into action, i.e. a recession or a particular cash flow crisis. Because every great business needs to be consistently looking beyond their horizon at what is coming round the corner. What is it that they could be moving towards? What else could they do beyond what they've always done? And you've got to constantly evolve. And I think the problems from a lot of recruitment businesses is that they've continued over many, many years, decades sometimes, doing a certain thing and believing, and rather I think naively, that market will remain the same forever. And we all know that isn't the case. So if you're in a position where you suddenly realize your market is not working and you've got grave concerns as to whether it'll ever return back to the way it used to be, then you, in a sense, I'm not saying it's too late, but you shouldn't be in that position. You should have already been working towards developing new models. You know, there's that old book, I think we've all read it. It's a cliched book, you know, that Who Moved My Cheese thing. We've all read that at some point back in the days, about going to the same place, expecting to find the same quantity of opportunity and seeing it diminish, but still going back. And I think there is a point before you get to a crisis position where you have to make decisions. Back to your question, Howard, I think that I've certainly there's a client of mine who I work with still after all these years, who started off working in procurement. It's a very niche area, procurement, recruitment, and their market really did die. I mean, they had a really tough time, and they pivoted and started to do tech, basically IT, in totally different markets, and focused on Europe. And to this day, that's what they do. And the guy that owns the two guys that own the business had never worked in that space before. But what they did was realize over a period of time that their market was shrinking and it wasn't going to get better. And they took a very brave decision to actually start developing a market that they actually didn't know anything about. I will say this: recruitment is recruitment. If you know how to do recruitment, adapting to new markets shouldn't be that difficult. And I think they proved that.
I think adapt is a really interesting word, because for me, it's not just about adapting into something else or into a new market. It's also about adapting your leadership style and the way that you run the business. It's very easy for us, and for anybody, to say, well, you need your business to adapt. But what does it adapt to? How long does it adapt to that for? Are the people that you have, do they have the ability to adapt? And that's, to your point, Paul, about the homework. That's the bit where you've got to do that homework and look at it. But also you've got to look at yourself as a leader and say, can I do that? Because we're in a market now where long term means 3 to 6 months, not 3 to 6 years. And most recruitment companies are driven by events. I'm working with a company that's just had a significant situation happen that they hadn't really planned for. I'm not sure they could have planned for, but they've got to very quickly adapt and produce results quickly. And the two things that drive that are cash. Can I do it? Do I have the money to do it? Are the reserves there to how it's? And the other one is confidence. As a leader, am I confident that as I change, if I need to change, can I see this through? What does that future look like? And if you can take your people on the journey that you're going to go on, then you can navigate your way through what's going on at the moment. I can give you two examples of two companies. One that's opened up a new service line from their existing business, and they're doing some advisory work around talent for their clients, and they're charging for that. Completely, I think you said recruitment is maturing, so that's a completely mature service. And another one has just opened up placing people into a new sector that they haven't done before. And they've done the brand work, they've done the marketing, they've done the homework, and they found that that's now being a very profitable part of their business. And particularly if you are running a company that's got less than 15, 20 people, you've got the agility to make it happen quickly. Long gone are the days that we three can remember sitting in big boards, where you had somebody present a really good idea and a week before you execute it. You could do things now if you're running a smaller business in 8 days. But it does come down to cash. Have you got it, and confidence? Do you think you can do it?
I think it's that belief, though, isn't it? And I've had a couple of conversations with clients this week who've had the same issue, where they've had big cash cow clients, and those cash cows have now folded on them. And I had a small agency that I've been working with now for over 18 months, where this happened 18 months ago. And that client was 90% of the business's revenue. And the usual story emerges. They never thought it would stop. It stopped instantly, and that stopped that cash line instantly. So we had a choice. So we sat down, and what Paul talked about there was absolutely right. We sat down and discussed where we thought the best moves would be and what we did. So we did a massive amount of due diligence on the market, looked at a market where we thought the best future opportunities were, not just the opportunities now. We decided on one sector, and that was part of the green sector, and we started to look at that. We then laid down plans of client and candidate acquisition. We set out timelines for how long we think it was going to take to get to achieve the results they want. We looked at what results we thought were tangible, as in cash in the bank. We looked at what results were intangible, as in terms of new opportunities, what's there. And from a fresh start 18 months ago, what we've now starting to see, we are starting to see that they have now reached the same point as they were before, when they had the 90% big client, but spread across loads of smaller clients, etc. They are now starting to dominate a landscape because they're one of the only recruitment agencies in that landscape. They've created a really good marketing approach to what's going on, to outreach to clients and to candidates. And we've built a proper people strategy. So we've looked at the digital outreach and how we do that, but we've built a proper people strategy for going out to speak to clients and speak to candidates and get in front of them. And that all stemmed from the due diligence that we did right at the beginning to make sure it was the right market and we had the right zest to go into that market and drive that market. And the first half of this year, we've already beaten the second half of last year completely, and we're predicting to double in the second half of this year. So they've gone from a zero start, because virtually all their clients stopped, to a really healthy situation, and we're going to still drive that. And what I'm going to use a second example, but I'm going to use it to answer the following question. Okay, so the following question is July 2025. We're sitting across from recruitment leaders who revenue are down 30% on last year, but they've invested heavily in their current approach. They ask us, and we get asked this question an awful lot: do I double down on what I know, or do I blow it up and start afresh? So what's your honest answer, and what's the one question that you'd ask them first?
The most difficult question of all time.
Get a grip, Paul. Come on. Get a grip.
I'm just finding Oxford University, because I think they may have an answer. But no, they haven't. They haven't got anybody clever enough to answer the question.
Get off the fence, you two, and get answering.
I think if you're looking to develop new markets, the thing that's pretty clear is it's not going to happen overnight. And it's that situation where you've got to understand that it is going to take a period of time. If you're looking for instant results, instant meaning for 3-6 months, then don't do it, because it's not likely to happen. It takes time to penetrate new markets. You've got to establish, as you said, Howard, you've got to be looking at your people strategy. You've got to be developing candidate databases. You've got to start to look at your marketing to establish your name in that market. There's an awful lot of BD work that needs to be done. Nothing is going to happen easily. And, there are no easy routes. It's very hard. I've been doing this 50 years, and to be honest, anything worth having, you have to work extremely hard for. I don't think that there is a golden bullet answer in any market. If it's a good market, believe me, people are already doing it. If you find a market there's not a single other recruitment business in, there's probably a good reason for that, and that is that there is no market. So anything you're trying to develop is likely to take time. You're going to have to work very hard to establish your position over a period of time. So the answer to this is that you do these things, you develop new markets whilst continuing to focus on your core market. You don't throw everything out you've worked very hard to achieve over the years, decades sometimes, and just start afresh overnight and expect instant results. What you do is you gravitate towards it over a period of time, and that means getting one or two or several people to work that market and start to make some ground whilst you continue to do what you're doing and double down in that space. But there comes a point, a pivotal point, where you have the chance to step back and recognize that your new market is looking hopefully very optimistic, and maybe at that point you can start to think about putting more resources into it. But you don't literally stop what you're doing and do something else and expect your cash flow to survive that juddering halt. It doesn't work that way. It has to be a gradual, sensible approach and takes time. So the answer is you don't stop doing what you started to do overnight. You've got to give it time. If you're expecting instant results, you're being completely unrealistic about the new market you're looking to get into.
I mean, the question I ask of the leaders I'm working with is, what is your attitude to risk right now? And that unearths a lot of feelings about the business, because as leaders, we're the ones accountable for the position of the business. You know, I spoke earlier on about cash and confidence. We're accountable for the families of the people that work for us. I mean, we feel it, don't we? It's not, we're in a different position when we own a business than people that work for us. There's a responsibility with that, there's a leadership dynamic with that. So we tend to have a conversation. I will have a conversation with them about what's your attitude to risk, because right now in this market, you're going to have to take a risk. But in a challenging market, the biggest risk is not to take a risk. And by that, I mean, you've got to move the dial in some way. Yeah. If it's you double down and you focus on what you've got and you focus on efficiencies and you try to get more out of your existing people and your existing clients, and you do it that way, or you keep doing the best you can with the existing clients and look for new clients, new services, new geographies, new partners with which to trade through. There's a list of things that you can do. But as a leader, I'd want to have that conversation of understanding, how are you feeling about what you may or may not have to do. Let's explore that together, because if you've got a doubt, then it won't, that doubt may resonate through your team, and you may not get the delivery that you desire. So that's the sort of question I would ask.
I think the first question I ask when clients, and I've asked this a number of times, is how do you think you should change? Because I think quite a lot of the time, a lot of the leaders know what they need to do and how they need to do it, but they've got into such a rut and such poor habits that they're not doing those type of things. And I'll give you a prime example. I very seldom post testimonials or videos of testimonials from clients on LinkedIn. But Andy Dunn from the Team Network had a conversation with one of my clients. Unbeknownst to me, she talked about what we'd done over the last sort of 6 to 9 months, and created a video from that, sent that to me and said, here, you should use that as a testimonial. And it has bugged me for the last 3 weeks to post it. So I finally posted it today from there. But this was a person who's, this was a business where single business, good recruiter, etc., had no time to pivot because money was absolutely required. So we built a strategy around what her buying clients were doing, what her lapsed clients were doing, and looking at what was to the left and right of those clients to have a new business strategy where we were doing a similar thing so she could maximize her candidate base and develop that client base. So we started to then follow every single candidate that she had interviewed and had out on interview over the last 24 months to find out where they'd gone and who they were working for. And they became target clients. We started to build money out of our current client base, because what we tend to do when we are in normal recruitment mode, we get a bit blasé. And we tend not to continue asking the client about innovation and developing new product lines, etc. So if they only think you do perm, they're never going to come to you with a contract or temp job. If they only think you do contract or temp, they're never going to come to you with a perm job. So we started to dig into her existing client base, and we started to find that there was lots of opportunities in those client base that weren't being utilized and weren't being leveraged. We started to do that. We then started to look at clients that were really good clients and how we could use those to promote them into other businesses. And so she started to work on that. And now from that firm footing moving forward, again, this half of the year, she's done more than what she did the whole of last year. And again, what we're forecasting for the second half of the year is to double that again. And that means that she'll be in extreme amount of profit, probably more profit than she's made in the last 5 to 10 years in recruitment, purely by digging into what she knows now but understanding that at some point she's going to have to pivot and move or develop her processes to keep herself in touch with the marketplace, let alone get herself in front of the marketplace. So I still think there's a lot of business to be had from our current client base and our lapsed client base, okay, as well as new clients. It's not just about pivoting. I think there's so much that we're missing in our current client bases. And one of the second questions I ask is, do you know how much your clients are spending on recruitment and what wallet spend do you get from them? And genuinely, we find that people do not know what their clients' capability and worth is, and we tend to ignore that. So I keep seeing this as well. Leaders underestimate how long real change takes in recruitment. They think they can pivot in 30 days, but then it's 6 months later, they're struggling. So what is the brutal truth about implementing timelines, and what's the biggest time waster you see leaders fall into?
I kind of alluded to this a moment ago, that you can't make changes overnight. It just doesn't work that way. So years ago, I remember when I was head of marketing back in the Office Angels days, amongst other things, and we would implement a new marketing plan, and we'd have people in the business saying it's not working. And we'd say, well, how long have you been trying? And they'd say, oh, giving it 6 weeks. You think, but you're not going to change the world in 6 weeks. You have to be persistent. You have to keep going in order to establish that something is working or isn't working. You can't make instant decisions about this. And I think the thing is, if you run a business and you are giving people direction and saying, right, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it, and this is the market we're going to work in, and so forth, and then 2-3 months later you say, no, it's not working, let's do this instead, and then 3 months later it's not working, let's do things in a different way. People very quickly lose faith in the business, and you sound panicked, and in fact you are panicked. If you're making the decision doing the correct level of due diligence that you want to pursue a new market, then you have to be prepared to give it time and not give up when it starts to get difficult, because you should have anticipated it was always going to be difficult. It's never going to be easy. It's going to take time. But back to Howard's point as well, you've got to make sure you've got the right people on the case, because you could have the best idea in the world, the market could be absolutely ripe for your opportunity for you to enter it, but if you don't have the people in your business that are capable of doing the role you've asked them to execute, then that's another issue. So there's an awful lot of factors to look at here.
And it's a good idea, Paul, as well, to your point. All of us, either in the businesses that we run now or in businesses that we've been involved in before, have had to pivot in some way. And I think it's helpful to us as leaders to look back at times in organizations where we have had to change. What worked? What didn't work? What went well? What didn't go well? And have that information for you and your business partners or your leadership team or your wider team, however you plan to make change happen. And just catch yourself by saying, okay, well, what mistakes have we made in the past? Or did we make when we worked somewhere else? Or the company that we work for made mistakes? What do we want to avoid? And if you can be honest with each other, with your leadership team, and hold each other accountable, that pivot becomes a bit more natural. And it could be, to the point I was making earlier about new clients or getting more wallet share, to your point, out of existing clients, or new geographies or new services. We want to change a little or a lot. What are the pitfalls? What's the timeline? Because for some, it can be 30 days, and for others, it can be 6 months. But if anything that I've said about what long term resonates with you at the moment, i.e., long term can be 3 to 6 months, you've got to make some of these changes happen, and happen quickly, because otherwise somebody else will do it, because we're in a fiercely competitive market. So you've got to hold each other to account, but it's really good to have a list of what those pitfalls are and know in advance how you're going to overcome them.
So I think the way I look at it, if you look at it in truth, if you've brought a new person into a business and you want to create profit off that person, whether they've got recruitment skills or not, I think it normally takes around about 12 months. So if we're talking about building a pivoting, etc., then 12 months would be the earliest date that I'm thinking that we're starting to see change and we're starting to see profit to come from that. It takes time to build a new client base, and it takes time from that client base to really trust you, and it takes time to understand the market so you can see the opportunities and create a consistent pipeline. It also takes time to take your brand from where it is and position your brand into that new market. So placing yourself into a new market takes a lot of time to build up, and that means that you've got to build a candidate base that gives you the capability and the capacity to compete in that market. So I think one of the biggest wastes of time is not doing enough due diligence before changing. Not having a strategy that helps you to pivot from one to the other. And you start to think about that seesaw strategy, going from where you are now to where you want to be, and going from your existing client base to your new client marketplace. So I think the biggest waste of time that actually comes from that, or the biggest problem that comes from that leaders fall into, is not blocking out time purely to work on the new market, and that time increasing over a period of time. And that happens because our old market is dragging them backwards into doing business or trying to fill jobs that they've probably got less than 20% chance of filling, but that desperation has set in that they need instant cash, and they think that instant cash is going to come from a job that has got 7 or 8 other agencies working on it. It's been out for 3 months. They've had 50 CVs, still had loads of interviews, but still haven't placed it. But for some reason, you think you can place that. And I think that's the biggest waste of time that we have working on jobs that we are never truly going to place, and thinking that that is going to be the nirvana, rather than actually focusing on building either from your existing client base or pivoting into a new client base and looking what you can get from those clients. And I think that's the biggest thing. As soon as you stop working poorly qualified roles and work roles that only you're going to fill, that extra time that you then create that you can put into business development starts to really move your business forward. So if we looked at that, then we know recruitment's moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour at the moment, whether it's from a technology point of view or whether it's from a client and candidate point of view. So what recruitment strategies that were brilliant sort of 24 to 18 months ago are now starting to die? And more importantly, what's killing them? What should we replace them with?
I think you've got to look at some old-fashioned things here, to be honest. One of the things that recruitment businesses have got in the habit of doing, and I'm going to refer back, there's a lot of questions on the chat about business development, and so maybe I can address a few of those. And I think that working jobs, which is what people tend to do in our industry, even when they know that they're struggling, they're going to struggle to fill those jobs for a variety of reasons, has always been a complete waste of time. And I've forever talking to clients about working good quality candidates, only because I know it works, and because that was the way I was trained a million years ago. Work great candidates. Too often people will say, and I know you two will back me up on it, we've got jobs to work on, but when you look at the jobs that they're working on, they're not jobs that they're likely to convert. The clients aren't committed to filling the roles, or they've given the same job to 15,000 other agencies. You've got to be very clear on what your opportunity is, and yet we see good candidates, and then because we don't have a job for them, we don't do anything with them, and they disappear. And I think this is old-fashioned recruitment, but there's a reason why we call it old school. It's because it works. And one of the best ways to do your business development, and I completely agree, by the way, with the comments about attending seminars, going to events, to use that expression, getting face time, making sure you're consistently visible with your clients, not only in terms of face-to-face at client meetings or in events, but also very much through social media. Is to make sure that you're representing great candidates, because that makes the difference in the market. And if you only work jobs, it doesn't work. And I mean, maybe you were looking, Howard, with this question for something more complicated as an answer, but for me, I'm always going to go back to a basic tenet here. If you can't fill roles because there aren't many, or the ones you have are very difficult to fill, why don't you take a good, strong look at some of the candidates you have? Consider that they have great skills and try and find them a role, because that will open doors in a whole range of directions.
Yeah, I think the strategy from 18 months ago that doesn't work now are those leaders that were bemused by the growth in AI and what it could do for their business, and either just parked it and hoped it would go away and hoped they didn't need to engage with it and carried on doing what they were doing. Whereas 18 months later, there are tools and techniques that very, very effectively and very cost effectively enable you to have more time to spend with candidates and with clients. And if you're going after a new market, a new geography, a new sector, whatever it may be, there are marketing tools, admin type tools that can all shave off a little bit more time. And I think that's something that people have got to get their heads around, got to get to grips with, because there's AI is there to help you as a leader, to help your business as a leader, to enable you to spend more of the quality time building relationships, speaking to candidates and clients.
I think I'd agree with both what you said there, and I think the other thing that has died, from my point of view, is the ability to build a really good candidate marketplace. And we keep having this conversation about what comes first, candidate or client, chicken or egg type scenario. And I have this conversation again with lots of people, is that you could have 1,000 jobs. If you've got no candidates to fill those jobs, those 1,000 jobs are worthless. So we're chasing jobs, back to Paul's comment. But I could have one candidate that could potentially fill those 1,000 jobs. But why aren't I chasing candidates? Why aren't I building a proper candidate marketplace? But it's not just building the candidate marketplace. And I think it's died because we don't think there's much value in candidates when the value is all in the candidate. And what we should be thinking about is not just what clients are looking for today with our eyes down approach, looking at what we've got, what jobs we're filling today, but start to look at what our clients are going to be filling in 3 months' time, 6 months' time, 12 months' time, and start to build that candidate base now. We can start to take products to them before they need it. So we're preempting what's happening rather than being reactive to what they want. And I think that's what we start to think about, is that what's completely dead is we stop building good, strong candidate bases. We're all chasing jobs. We're all chasing clients. And I think that's the bit that's died. And it's killed because we don't see the value in candidates, when actually the value is all in the candidate, and we should drive that. So this is a question I think we're all sort of dying to answer, and a little bit unsure how to answer it, but I'm going to shout it at you, see what happens. If you had to rebuild recruitment business from scratch today, with half the budget and twice the pressure, what would you do first? And what would you ignore completely? And what do you wish you'd started 6 months ago?
One of those questions, isn't it?
Well, we have 5 minutes.
Come on.
It's another one of those questions. Look, I think, let's be very clear, we're in the people business. So, if you're starting a business, it's all about the quality of your people. If you're taking on people, what kind of people have you got? What kind of culture are you developing? What are you going to bring to the table as the leader, as the owner of the business? It comes down to that point. The second thing is, what is your market? Have you done your due diligence, as we've been saying? Are you clear in your own mind that there's a real opportunity? And what are your USPs? What are you going to do that's different from what other people are already doing in that market? As I've already said, the chance of you finding a new market that no one else has ever discovered is virtually zero. So there's going to be other recruitment competitors in that space already. Who are they? What are they doing? Where are the gaps? What can you provide that others are not giving? And it's no good saying our USP is us because we don't work elsewhere, because everybody says that. What is it you're going to do? What is your edge from a marketing perspective, from a fee perspective, from a service perspective? What is it that's going to make people think, I want to use you rather than one of your competitors. And if you can't answer those questions, don't do it, because being vanilla and the same as everybody else in that market is not going to get you the market share that you desire. Again, it comes back to preparation. Do your homework. Who's there already? How are they doing it? What are they doing? And then to Howard's point, the one I also made, are the candidates available? I remember, Howard, you'll remember this, back in the day when we were working together. There was obviously a lot of work going on around blockchain and all that stuff. And, there were a lot of recruitment businesses getting into blockchain because clients were asking them for people that could do that. The problem they then had was they couldn't find the candidates. There were a lot of roles, but the candidates, weren't there in numbers. It's very difficult to find people. Back to your point, if you can find great candidates, then market them, because if the market's there and you've got one or two, you can make money. So I think it also comes down to the availability of the kind of candidates that you're looking for. It's not about budget. Budget's important, but at the end of the day, it's about your ideas. Why would somebody buy from you and not buy from one of your competitors? A really simple question. If you cannot answer it, don't do it, is my best advice.
I think I would, if I was starting again with a white sheet of paper, a blank sheet of paper, which is a test and something we should do anyway, I would want to know, if you're asking me, what do you
His batteries are
want to be
running out,
known for?
Howard, I think.
Yeah.
Do we need more? Is it not coming through?
You keep cutting out, Dave, for a little bit, but keep going.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. Yeah, what do you want to be known for? So if you're running a business, what do you want to be known for? And does that mean more people, more AI, more services, or different services, or sharper services? And the first thing I do is look at my clients and ask, what are they buying and what do they value? Because they'll pay you for things that they value. And if you're starting again, and we don't all have the luxury of starting again, but if you're starting again, what is it that the clients value that I can provide to them, and what do I need to build that business? It's a short answer, but we're time for time.
I think the first thing I'd do is I'd engage with a business coach who understands my market and what's going on, and get them to help me to build a strategy and
I
keep
know
me
a
accountable.
few.
I know a few as well,
of
Dave.
those.
But it's about being kept accountable to that strategy. And then what would I ignore? I'd ignore all those clients that have no respect for recruitment, where they're just giving it out to anybody and everybody. And I would look to only work with clients that completely respect what I do and treat me like a prospect rather than treat me like a suspect. And that means I'd make sure that my business is doing, and this is what I did, wish I'd start doing 6 months ago, would be I'd be developing and doing business development every single day without fail. Every single day is business development. And the final thing is then what you do is maximize your tech stack. Are we using our tech stack correctly, as you said, Dave, to create time, to look at data, because data to tell us where we go. Data then can create satisfaction. Are we satisfying our clients, our candidates, our consultants, etc.? And so they're the things that I would start to think about to drive. So get myself a really good strategy, stop working poorly qualified clients and start to work proper clients, business development every day, and maximize my tech stack. Because we're short of time, we've got 2 minutes. So let's fast forward to January 2026. Looking back at the recruitment leaders who thrived during this shift versus those who have struggled, what's the one thing the successful ones did differently that should we all be doing right now?
The answer is be decisive, be visionary, get people on the side that work with you. Make sure there's a collective vision about where you're going and why you're doing things. Make sure your communication is heightened. As a leader, don't, if you've done the due diligence and you're confident that you're moving in the right direction, be steadfast, don't give up easily. Show strength, show courage. Dave's point about risks, there's going to be some risks involved. Make sure that you stay true to your vision and then go for it. So the people that make the shifts, that are agile, are people who are decisive. You've got to be prepared to make those decisions and then go for it in a very strong fashion. Procrastinating isn't going to get you very far, that's for sure.
For me, it's to answer the question, who are you accountable for the decisions that you've made? And if you have somebody that you're accountable for, you are more likely to thrive than not. So if I'm looking back in 6 months' time as to who was successful, it would be those that have been held accountable for the actions, for the decisions that they made. That would look like success for me.
So I think on that point there, Dave, that it's who then keeps you accountable as well, because you're accountable for some people, and what's going on, it's who keeps you accountable for.
Sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah, I meant that. Yeah, I meant as a leader, so that who is holding you accountable for the decisions that you make.
Okay.
Yeah.
The one thing that I said that I'd have done differently than they're doing right now, it's understand the fragility of your client base. Don't believe that every client, especially those big clients, are always going to use you, because we've seen so often that those clients often drop out and leave the client absolutely in problems. So it's that therefore having a very, very structured and targeted business development strategy, developing different strategies for existing clients, your lapsed clients and new clients, and learn that if you're standing still, you're actually going backwards. So what are you innovating? What are you doing? What are you bringing to your clients to make better informed decisions and keep your services evolving in line with what they want? And I think that's what I do. And that means to do that, you need to create time. Then you need to build a tech stack that is a business enabler rather than a problem for yourself. So to me, that's what I do. And what the people I start to see that are really having a big time this year, they're the ones that are doing consistent business development. They don't believe that their clients are going to be with them constantly. They do constant things to keep them clients with them constantly, but they do not expect that. They work really hard. They don't get, what's the right word? I was going to say lazy, but it's a bit too harsh of a word. Complacent. They don't get complacent. Yeah, they don't get complacent with those clients, and they drive that. So I think that's what I'd be doing, and that's what I'd be sort of focusing on right now if I was running a recruitment agency. Paul, Dave, we've got through those questions. Thank you very much. Ladies and gents, thanks for your input. It's been much appreciated. Next week, there is no podcast out next week. However, what is coming out next week is the second ebook, and it's the ebook of the podcast series, where you can see each individual question and you get the 4 answers from each individual guest on the podcast, so you can start to measure from a small agency right to a big agency what they're doing for leadership and things like that. So when that comes out, we'll be emailing out next week from that. So if you want that, send us an email for that for that ebook, and we'll send it out to you. And as usual, there'll be a free gift for those that haven't had a free 60-minute mentoring session from there. So, ladies and gents, thanks for your time. Paul and Dave, thanks for your time, and we look forward to seeing you all again in 2 weeks' time.
Thanks, Howard. Thank you, everybody.
Cheers, guys. Team. Have a good rest of the week, everybody.
Cheers again. Bye.